The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Golden sand rolled like waves beneath the burning sun. Each dune rising like a wall against the horizon. The air shimmered with heat. The ground was so hot it felt alive, ready to swallow anyone foolish enough to walk across it. A lone soldier moved slowly through this wasteland. His armor was scratched, his water nearly gone, and his body pushed far beyond its limit. Every step felt heavier than the last. Sweat ran down his face, drying almost instantly in the cruel sun. Still, he pressed forward. He had no choice. Then, in the distance, he saw something unusual. At first, he thought it was just another broken dune or maybe a trick of the light. But as he moved closer, he noticed smoke rising faintly into the sky. His heart beat faster. In the desert, smoke meant wreckage. Wreckage meant danger or survivors. He gripped his weapon tightly and pushed onward. The wreckage came into view, a shattered vessel, half buried in the sand. Its shape was unlike any human craft he had ever seen. Strange symbols glowed faintly across its broken hull, flickering like dying embers, metal bent and twisted in unnatural ways, as if the ship had fought against the desert itself before crashing. The soldier paused, scanning the area. The silence was unnerving. No wind, no movement, just the faint hum of broken alien machinery. He stepped carefully, boots sinking into the sand, every sense alert. Then he heard its soft, ragged breathing. His eyes darted to the sound. Among the wreckage, half covered by broken metal, lay a figure. At first, he thought it was another soldier, but as he drew closer, his breath caught. It was no human. The figure was tall, slender, and cloaked in shimmering armor unlike anything forged on Earth. Her skin carried a faint glow, like moonlight trapped beneath the surface. Her hair spilled like silver fire, framing a face that was both regal and fragile. A crown of delicate metal and jewels clung to her brow, cracked and scorched, yet still shining with power. She was wounded badly. Deep burns and cuts marked her arms and chest. A strange energy flickered weakly round her, as though her very life force was slipping away. Her lips parted, and she whispered something in a language he could barely understand. For a moment, the soldier froze. An alien queen. He had heard rumors of her kind, leaders of empires beyond the stars, untouchable, feared, respected. And yet, here she was broken, helpless, lying in the sand at his feet. Every instinct told him to turn back. Helping her could mean death. If her enemies were close, they would come for her and kill anyone in their way. But as he looked at her, he saw her eyes. They glowed faintly, like twin stars fading in the dark. Eyes filled with pain, fear, and something else, a silent plea. His throat was dry. His legs trembled, but still, he crouched down beside her. "I've got you," he whispered, though he knew she might not understand. Her hand twitched weakly, reaching toward him before falling back into the sand. He checked her wounds. They were serious to serious. She wouldn't last long without help. He looked around. There was nothing but endless sand in every direction. No shelter, no water, no safety, only heat, death, and distance. He should have left her. Any soldier would have. She wasn't his mission. She wasn't even his kind. But something inside him refused. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was madness. Or maybe it was the way she looked at him, with those glowing eyes that seemed to cut straight through his soul. He made his choice. With a deep breath, he slid his arms beneath her and lifted her from the wreckage. She was lighter than he expected, but the weight was more than physical. He wasn't just carrying a body, he was carrying a life, a future, maybe even the fate of worlds. The queen stirred slightly, her voice weak, broken. Words spilled from her lips in fragments he couldn't piece together. But one word repeated again and again, whispered with desperate strength, safe. Safer. He adjusted his grip, pulling her close against his chest. The heat pressed down on him like a mountain, but he forced his legs to move, step after step, into the vast desert. The journey had begun. Behind them, the wreckage burned quietly, smoke rising into the cloudless sky. Somewhere beyond the dunes, enemies might already be searching. But in that moment, the soldier had no thought for tomorrow, only the next step, only survival, only her. The desert swallowed them both, leaving nothing behind, but the faint trail of footprints slowly fading in the sand. The desert had no mercy. The soldier's boots sank deeper with every step, the hot sand sliding back like it wanted to drag him down. His throat burned, dry as ash, and each breath felt like inhaling fire. The sun above was a cruel master, a blazing white disk that refused to move, pressing its weight on his shoulders. He had carried heavy packs, wounded comrades, even battlefield supplies before, but never like this. Never across a wasteland that seemed to stretch into eternity. The queen rested in his arms, her body faintly glowing with an unearthly light. At times he wondered if it was his mind playing tricks, but when he glanced down, he saw its soft pulses moving under her skin, like her veins carried liquid starlight. Her wounds still bled slowly, but the glow seemed to keep her alive, though weaker with each mile. Her head shifted slightly, brushing against the side of his chest. She murmured words again, her voice so faint it barely carried above the whisper of the wind. He couldn't understand most of it, but he caught fragments, shadows, betrayal, fire. He didn't know if she was speaking to him or if she was trapped in fevered dreams. Still, he listened. Sometimes her eyes fluttered open, those glowing orbs locking onto his face for a heartbeat before sliding closed again. Every time she looked at him, he felt a strange weight in his chest, not fear, not duty. Something heavier, something unexplainable. By the time night came, the desert changed. The heat fled, leaving only biting cold. The sand that burned his skin by day now froze him to the bone. Stars spread across the sky in endless numbers, more than he had ever seen before. Strange constellations glittered, some human, some unknown. Out here, under that sky, he felt small, just a man carrying a secret that could shake worlds. He set her down gently against a dune, wrapping his torn jacket around her trembling body. Her breathing was shallow, her chest rising and falling like a fragile flame. He scavenged what little he had, half a canteen of water, to ration bars barely fit for eating. He pressed the canteen to her lips. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't respond, but then she swallowed weakly, the glow in her skin brightening ever so slightly. "You'll make it," he muttered, though he wasn't sure if it was to reassure her or himself. The silence was broken by movement in the darkness. His eyes narrowed. Something was out there, just beyond the dunes. The desert had predators, not all of them natural. The sound of claws scraping stone, the hiss of scales sliding over sand, filled the night air. The soldier rose quietly, weapon in hand, his body trembling with exhaustion, but his instincts sharp. From the shadows, shapes emerged, lean, long-limbed beasts with glowing eyes, their movements quick, their teeth flashing in the moonlight. They circled, sniffing the air, drawn by the scent of blood, the queen's blood. The soldier stepped forward, planting himself between the creatures and her. His pulse hammered in his ears. He raised his rifle, aiming steady despite the shaking. In his hands, the first beast lunged. He fired once, the crack of the shot splitting the night. The creature collapsing into the sand. The others hissed, scattering for a moment before regrouping. His jaw tightened. He couldn't waste bullets. Every shot had to matter. They came again, fast and relentless. He fired twice more, then swung the butt of his weapon against the nearest beast, knocking it back. The fight blurred into sound and motion, snarls, sand spraying, his body straining to keep them away. When it was over, the ground was scarred with claw marks and blood. The bodies of the predators lay still, their glowing eyes fading. He staggered back, breath ragged, chest heaving. His strength was nearly gone, but she was still safe. That was what mattered. He sank down beside her, wiping the sweat and sand from his face. Her eyes opened again, glowing faintly in the moonlight. She looked at him, not with fear this time, but with something softer. Her lips moved, shaping words he could almost understand. One word was clear: human. The way she said it filled with wonder, disbelief, and something like gratitude sent a shiver through him. He didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat was too dry, and his body too tired. The queen reached out, her hand trembling, and brushed his arm before falling back into sleep. The soldier stared at her for a long time, the stars burning cold above them. He thought of the distance left to travel, miles upon miles of unforgiving sand. He thought of the Enemies who must already be searching, of the predators lurking just beyond the dunes, of his own body slowly giving out. And yet, despite it all, he knew one thing with certainty. He could not stop. The desert would try to break him. The journey would try to kill him. But as long as she breathed, as long as her heart beat faintly against his chest when he carried her, he would keep moving. Morning came again, the sun rising, like a blade of fire across the horizon. He lifted her once more, his legs screaming, his back aching, step by step into the endless desert. Each footprint left behind told the same story. A man against the impossible, a queen against death, and together, a path no one else dared walk. The night had passed, but the desert showed no mercy. As the first rays of sunlight cut across the horizon, the soldier rose with aching limbs, sand clinging to his armor, lips cracked from thirst. He adjusted the queen in his arms, her faint glow barely visible now under the harsh daylight. Each time her breath stuttered, his heart jolted. He had to keep moving, no matter what. The desert seemed endless. Dunes rolled endlessly like waves of gold, yet the silence was broken only by the sound of his boots sinking into the sand and the faint, shallow breaths of the queen. The weight of her body pressed heavy against him, but he didn't falter. Step after step, he pressed forward, driven by something he couldn't quite name. By midday, the heat became unbearable again. The sun was merciless, burning everything it touched. The air shimmered like glass, and the sand burned with every step. The soldier paused on a dune, setting her down gently beneath a sliver of shade created by a jagged piece of rock. Jutting from the sand, he drank the last drops from his canteen, then pressed it against her lips. She swallowed weakly, a single spark of light flaring across her skin before fading again. That was when he heard it, low, distant, like a growl carried on the wind. He froze, scanning the horizon. Nothing moved, but the sound came again, closer this time. He gripped his weapon, every nerve alert. The desert was alive with things unseen, and danger was never far. Suddenly, the queen stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly even under the sun. She whispered something, her voice broken but urgent. He leaned closer, trying to make sense of it. One word cut through clearly, even in her strange tongue: hunters. The soldier's stomach tightened. So it wasn't just beasts. Someone was tracking them. He lifted her again and forced himself onward, quickening his pace despite the pain that screamed through his legs. Hours passed, the sun sinking slowly toward the horizon. The shadows stretched longer, and with them came unease. Each time he glanced back, he thought he saw movement at the edge of the dune, shapes that vanished as soon as he looked. Directly, when night fell, the truth came. Figures emerged from the darkness, tall, armored, their eyes glowing faintly like embers. They moved silently, too precise to be animals. The soldier knew at once. These were no random scavengers. These were soldiers, hunters of the queen. He lowered her carefully behind a dune and crouched low, rifle in hand. His pulse thundered in his ears as he counted them. 5, 6, no, more. A squad, fanning out, their weapons gleaming under the moonlight. They were searching, their movements sharp and practiced. The soldier swallowed hard. He could run, leave her here, save himself. That would be the smart choice. But when he glanced back at her lying weak, her skin glowing faintly, her crown cracked but still clinging to her head, he knew he couldn't. He had already made his choice. He waited until the nearest hunter came within striking distance. Then he moved. The crack of his rifle split the night, dropping the first of them before the others realized what had happened. Shouts rang out in a language he didn't understand, and suddenly the desert was alive with chaos. The hunters fired, strange weapons, beams of light cutting through the sand. He rolled behind the dune, returning fire, his training carrying him through every desperate second. But he was only one man, and there were too many. The queen stirred again, raising her head weakly. Her eyes glowed brighter now, though her body was trembling, nearly broken. She raised one hand, and from her palm, a faint shimmer of energy spread outward, forming a thin barrier around them. The beams that struck it scattered like sparks on glass. She coughed violently from the effort, but the shield held. The soldier used the chance. He fired again and again, every shot precise, taking down to more hunters. The rest fell back, regrouping, their voices echoing across the dunes. They weren't retreating, they were waiting, watching, when silence returned. His hands shook as he lowered his rifle. He looked at her. She was pale, her glow flickering like a dying flame. That shield had cost her dearly. Her lips moved, whispering words he couldn't fully understand. But he recognized one, repeated softly, "Safe with you." The soldier felt his chest tighten. Safe. She thought he could keep her safe. Against the desert, against the hunters, against death itself. He didn't know if she was right, but he wasn't going to prove her wrong. Through the night, he kept watch. His body screamed for rest, but his eyes never left the dunes. He knew. They were out there, waiting. The desert had become a battlefield, and he was trapped in the middle with a queen who held more secrets than she revealed. As dawn broke, painting the sand with blood-red light, he lifted her once more. His legs trembled, his lungs burned, but he moved, step after step, away from the hunters, deeper into the desert. The journey was far from over, and now the danger was no longer hidden. It stalked them openly, closing in with every mile. But he would carry her. He would carry her until the desert itself gave way. The days in the desert blurred together. Time became a cruel trick, measured only by the rising and setting of the sun. The endless dunes shifting shape but never offering escape. The soldier's body screamed with pain at every step, his muscles raw, his throat a battlefield of thirst. Yet he did not stop. He could not. The weight in his arms was more than a wounded queen. It was a promise he refused to break. By the fourth day, his pace slowed, his feet dragged, his armor felt like stone, and his vision swam. He stumbled, fell to one knee, sand filling his gloves. For a moment he thought he could go no further. But then she stirred, her faint glow brushing against his chest. Her voice, weak but sharp, slipped from her lips in a language broken yet haunting. He didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. She was urging him forward. He forced himself up again, gripping her tighter, and walked. That night, the air was cold, the stars endless above them. He built a small fire with scraps of dried brush he had managed to gather. The flames barely enough to fight the chill. He laid her beside it, covering her with his jacket again. Her breathing steadied in the warmth, her skin shimmering faintly. In the firelight, she opened her eyes, their glow reflecting the flames, and studied him. For the first time, her voice rose stronger, the alien language carrying a rhythm almost like music. He tilted his head, trying to follow, but gave up with a tired smile. "I don't understand," he muttered. Her lips curved faintly, as though amused. She tried again, speaking slower, and this time a word emerged in his own tongue. "Human." He nodded. "Yes, human." He tapped his chest. "Soldier." Her gaze softened. She touched her chest weakly. "Queen." The word was clear, simple, direct. For a long time, they stared at each other in silence. Two souls from worlds apart, yet closer in that moment than either expected. The fire crackled softly, the desert wind whispering around them. The soldier lowered his weapon beside him and leaned back, exhaustion finally catching him. But before sleep could take him, her hand reached out, trembling, and rested lightly on his arm. The touch was so light he almost thought he imagined it. Yet it was there, warm and deliberate. He turned his head. Her eyes glowed steadily now. Not as bright as before, but stronger than in the past days. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. That single touch carried meaning beyond words. Trust. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of it. He was no savior, no hero. He was just a man doing what he thought was right. But to her, to this alien queen, his choice to carry her through death's grip meant something more. Sleep came to him in fragments, broken by the howls of distant beasts and the shifting sands. Each time he woke, he checked on her. Each time, her eyes found his, as if she never truly slept, watching him with a strange mixture of gratitude and something deeper he dared not name. On the fifth day, her strength returned enough that she could speak small pieces of her story. Her words were halting, broken, but clear enough to paint images in his mind. She had been betrayed. Her own guard had turned against her, a coup meant to erase her line forever. Her ship was ambushed, forced down into the desert, left to die. The soldier listened in silence, his jaw tight. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask what her survival meant for the galaxy. It didn't matter. What mattered was that she was alive, and he was the one keeping her that way. But her words did something he hadn't expected. They made him protective, fiercely so. The idea of her enemies out there, hunting, waiting, filled him with a fire stronger than the desert sun. She wasn't just a burden anymore. She wasn't just someone to save out of duty. She was his responsibility. That night, as the firelight flickered against the dunes, she surprised him again. She shifted closer, her weak body leaning against his side. He stiffened, unsure, but didn't move away. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder, her silver hair brushing against his armor. Safe, she whispered, the word clear this time. His chest tightened. He stared at the flames, unsure what to say. Finally, he nodded slowly. Safe. He repeated. Her breathing steadied, and soon she slept. But the soldier did not. He stared into the fire, long into the night, the weight of her words heavier than any enemy. As dawn came, the journey continued. The desert still stretched endlessly, the dangers still stalked in the distance. But something had changed. Each step no longer felt like carrying a stranger. Each mile was no longer just survival. There was a bond forming, quiet but undeniable, between the human soldier and the alien queen. It was fragile, it was unspoken, but it was there, and with every step, the soldier felt it grow stronger. The desert gave nothing back. Each day stole more strength, more hope, until even the soldier's steady resolve began to crack. His legs moved only because they had to, carrying him forward step after step, though each stride felt like dragging chains through fire. His lips were split, his tongue heavy, his vision blurred with white haze. The heat was no longer just outside. It lived inside him, burning from within. The alien queen in his arms was lighter now, not because she had truly lost weight, but because he had grown weaker. Still, he carried her. He always carried her. Her glow had dimmed to the faintest shimmer, barely visible under the punishing sun. She was alive, but only just. The horizon taunted him, shifting with mirages that promised water, shelter, salvation, only to vanish when he neared. His body ached for rest, for escape, but he refused until his body gave him no choice. It happened without warning. His knees buckled. He stumbled once, twice, then fell hard into the sand, his chest slamming into the ground. The queen slipped from his arms, rolling gently onto the dune. The impact rattled his bones, his arms refusing to push him back up. He lay there, panting, his face pressed against burning grains that felt sharper than blades. His vision darkened at the edges. A sound rose in his ears, a dull roar like waves crashing in a faraway sea. He tried to move, but his limbs were stone. His body had reached its limit. The queen stirred weakly, her glowing eyes opening to see him collapsed beside her. She whispered something soft, almost broken, but the tone carried desperation. She reached toward him, her hand trembling violently before falling short. The soldier groaned, tried again to rise, but his body betrayed him. He pushed once, twice, then fell back each time. His strength was gone. For the first time since the journey began, he felt fear, not for her, but for himself. If he could not carry her, if he could not stand, this desert would claim them both. The thought clawed at him, tearing through his exhaustion. Yet his body did not obey. Then something strange happened. The queen, though nearly broken herself, pressed her palm into the sand. A faint glow pulsed from her skin, spreading outward in weak ripples. The air shimmered faintly round them, a dome of fragile light forming like a shield. Her lips moved, whispering in her language, every word strained. He realized she was using her last strength, not for herself, but for him. The light spread across his body, cooling the fire in his chest, softening the bite of exhaustion. It wasn't healing, not truly, but it was a gift of time, a breath pulled from nothing. Her body shook violently with the effort, her glow dimming further, until she collapsed fully against the sand. The shield flickered, nearly gone, but the soldier felt something stir inside him, a spark, a demand. No, he rasped. his voice barely more than air. He pushed again, his arms trembling, his knees screaming. This time he rose halfway. He dragged himself to her side, lifting her weak form back into his arms. His body felt as if it would break apart, every muscle screaming, but he locked his jaw. Her eyes fluttered open once more, glowing faintly as they met his. She whispered a single word, fragile yet clear, "Believe." He swallowed hard, his throat raw, his chest burning, but he nodded. "I do," he whispered back. The night that followed was worse. Cold gnawed at him, the wind tearing across the dunes, howling like wolves. He curled himself around her to shield her from the chill, his body shaking violently. Each time his eyes closed, nightmares of failure ripped him back, awake visions of leaving her in the sand, of hunters finding them, of her glow fading into nothing. By dawn, he was little more than a shadow of himself. Yet when the sun rose, he stood again. He lifted her carefully, feeling the faint beat of her heart against his chest. It was weak, but still there, still fighting. The desert stretched endlessly ahead. The horizon mocked him again with false promises. But he stepped forward anyway. His body was breaking, but his will remained. As the day dragged on, he found himself muttering to her, even though she could not answer, "You're going to make it. I'll get you there. Just stay with me." The words weren't just for her. They were for himself, to keep his legs moving, to keep his mind alive. Every mile became a war, every step a victory. His body wanted to surrender, but his heart refused. The bond between them, fragile, unspoken, pulled him onward when nothing else could. By evening, his shadow stretched long across the sand, his breath ragged but steady. He knew he hadn't won yet. They were still far from safety. The hunters might return at any moment. The desert would not stop trying to kill them. But he was still walking. She was still alive, and that was enough. The desert was not finished with them. The soldier's body was a wreck, his steps uneven, his breath shallow, but still he pressed forward. Each rise of the dunes felt like climbing mountains, each descent like falling into pits that swallowed his strength. The queen lay against his chest, lighter than ever, her glow faint as dying embers. He feared if he looked too long, he might see it vanish entirely. The sun tormented them by day, the cold gnawed at them by night. But it was not only the desert that stood against them now. Dark clouds rolled in, heavy and unnatural, covering the horizon with a storm that felt alive. Lightning split the sky, illuminating jagged dunes and shadows that twisted into monstrous shapes. The wind howled, carrying sand so sharp it cut like blades. The soldier wrapped himself around the queen, bending his body forward to shield her as the storm struck. Sand stung his skin, finding every gap in his armor, filling his mouth, his eyes, his lungs. He could barely see the ground, but he moved anyway. One step, then another, then another. Through the roar of the storm came another sound, something deeper, more deliberate. He turned his head and glimpsed figures moving within the wall of sand. Not beasts this time. Hunters. They had followed him across the desert, waiting for the moment when he would be weakest. Now, cloaked by the storm, they closed in. The soldier tightened his grip on the queen and staggered up the next dune. The storm blinded him, but shapes moved closer, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness. He knew he could not outrun them. Not like this. He slid her gently down into the sand at the base of a rock outcrop, pressing her against it to shield her from the wind. Her hand weakly caught his wrist, her glowing eyes searching his. He understood her meaning before she spoke. "Stay." But he shook his head. "You'll be safe," he rasped, his voice broken. "I promise." He turned, raising his rifle, his body trembling from exhaustion, but his mind sharp. The first hunter leapt through the storm, weapon raised. The soldier fired, the shot flashing like lightning, dropping the figure into the sand. More followed, their weapons spitting light. He ducked behind the outcrop, returning fire, each shot placed with desperate precision. The storm swallowed everything: sound, sight, direction. Shadows blurred into sand, enemies appeared and vanished in seconds. He fought not with strength, but with fury, refusing to let them touch her. His weapon grew hot, the stock bruising his shoulder, his hands numb from recoil. Still he fought. But there were too many. For every hunter he dropped, Two more appeared. They shouted in their alien tongue, their voices sharp against the wind. Blasts scorched the sand around him, tearing holes into the rock. He ducked low, sweat and blood stinging his eyes. His strength was gone. He knew it. Then the queen's glow flared. He looked back. She had raised her hand again, trembling violently, her body nearly broken. Light spilled from her palm, weaving into the storm, bending the sand around them. A shield shimmered into being, fragile but real. The hunter's weapon struck it, scattering harmlessly into sparks. Her face was pale, her body shaking, but she held it. The soldier surged forward with renewed fire, striking down the nearest attackers. The storm raged, but together they carved space within him with steel and fire. Her with light and will dot when the storm finally began to die. Only silence remained. The hunters' bodies lay scattered, their weapons half buried in the sand. The soldier stood swaying, his rifle heavy in his hands. The queen collapsed back, her glow flickering dangerously low. He dropped beside her, pulling her into his arms. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but still burning with light. Almost, she whispered. He followed her gaze, through the thinning storm, past the dunes. He saw a faint structure on the horizon. A building, small and distant, but real. An outpost, salvation. Hope surged in his chest, burning away the exhaustion. He rose, clutching her close, and began to walk. His legs screamed, his lungs burned. But the sight of that outpost pulled him forward like a rope dragging him from the abyss. Hours passed, though he could no longer tell time. The storm faded behind them, the desert silent once more. His body moved without thought, each step a battle, but the outpost grew closer, clearer. Walls of metal, antennas reaching skyward, lights blinking faintly against the endless sand dot at last. When he thought his body would finally give out for good, he reached the gates. His voice broke as he shouted, his cry swallowed by the desert. Wind, shapes appeared atop the walls, human shapes. Soldiers, his kind. Their voices rang out, their weapons lowered in surprise as they rushed to open the gates. The soldier staggered inside. Collapsing to his knees, he held the queen tightly, refusing to let her slip from his arms even as hands reached to take her. His vision blurred, the world spinning, but one truth burned bright in his chest. He had carried her through 90 miles of desert, through heat, storms, predators, and hunters. He had done the impossible, and she was alive. The gates slammed shut behind him. The roar of the storm faded, replaced by the heavy clang of metal and the shouts of human voices. The soldier dropped to his knees inside the outpost, every muscle in his body screaming, his lungs clawing for air. His arms refused to release their burden. The alien queen still rested against his chest, her glow faint but present, alive. Medics rushed toward him. Rough hands tried to take her, but he resisted, clutching her tighter, shaking his head. His voice cracked as he rasped, "Careful, she's not just anyone." The medics froze, stunned by the sight of her. Even in her weakened state, the queen's beauty was undeniable, her crown cracked but still gleaming, her skin glowing softly in the dim lights of the outpost. Whispers spread quickly through the small crowd that had gathered, soldiers and workers. Staring in disbelief, finally, the soldier allowed her to be carried gently onto a stretcher. He staggered after them, swaying but refusing to stop, his boots dragging across the floor. He would not leave her side, not now. Inside the infirmary, strange lights flickered overhead, the hum of machines filling the air. Human medics worked frantically, but their tools seemed primitive against her alien physiology. They stitched wounds, applied fluids, but the glow inside her body was something they couldn't touch, something only she controlled. Hours passed. The soldier sat in a corner, slumped but awake, his eyes fixed on her. He replayed every mile in his head, the wreckage, the predators, the hunters, the storm. 90 miles of torment, every step a war, and yet he had made it. Against every odd, he had carried her here. Her breathing steadied, the glow across her skin brightened again. Pulsing slowly like the beat of a heart, she opened her eyes. The soldier leaned forward, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "You made it," he whispered. "We made it." Her gaze found his, steady and unblinking. She studied him for a long moment. her glowing eyes seeming to pierce deeper than sight. Then, slowly, she raised her hand. Weak fingers brushed against his arm, her lips parted, and in halting but clear words, she spoke his language. "You carried me." He nodded, unsure how to answer. "Yes, across the desert." Her voice grew stronger, each word careful, deliberate. "No one ever has. Not for me, not even my own." He swallowed, throat tight. He had expected gratitude, perhaps, even reverence, but the weight in her tone was heavier, sharper, filled with something he couldn't name. She sat up slowly, her strength returning with each breath. The medics moved to stop her, but she silenced them with a single glance, her presence filling the room with a quiet authority no one dared defy. She turned back to him, her eyes burning brighter now. "You risked everything," she said. "Your life, your soul, 90 miles of death. And for what? You did not know me. You owed me nothing." He opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth was simple. He didn't know why. He couldn't explain it, not even to himself. It had been more than duty, more than instinct. It had been something deeper, something he hadn't dared to put into words. She leaned closer, her face inches from his, her voice soft but filled with fire. "Among my people, such devotion is more than loyalty. It is destiny. You saved not just my life, you claimed my heart." The room seemed to vanish round them. He stared at her, stunned, unable to move. Her lips curved faintly, her eyes glowing like twin stars. "I will not return to my throne alone," she whispered. "I will not forget the man who carried me when I was broken. You are no longer just a soldier. You are mine, and I want you as my mate." The words struck him like thunder. For a moment, silence pressed down heavier than the desert sun. The medics froze, the gathered soldiers exchanged shocked glances, but no one dared speak. He sat frozen, his mind racing. He had carried her because it was right, because he could not abandon her, because her eyes, in that wreckage, had begged for something human in a galaxy that had none. And now, here she was, offering him something greater than gratitude, something that could change the course of his life. Forever, her hand reached out, trembling but steady, resting against his chest. He felt the faint warmth of her glow seep into him, her eyes never leaving his. "You will not refuse me," she said softly, but not as a command, as a truth, as a promise. The soldier drew in a slow breath. The desert, the hunters, the storm, all of it had led to this moment. He had not asked for it. He had not expected it. But he knew deep inside that he could never walk away. He took her hand gently in his own, his voice quiet but firm. Then, "I am yours." Her eyes closed for a moment, relief and triumph washing over her face. When they opened again, they burned with new light, stronger, brighter, alive. Round them, whispers spread. A human soldier chosen by an alien queen, a bond forged in fire and sand. The soldier felt the weight of it, the enormity of what had just begun. But when he looked at her, he knew one truth above all else. He had carried her through death itself, and now she would carry him into a destiny neither could have imagined.